Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Vladimir Putin, the dictator of so-called Russia, has been hit with massively bad news this week. So let's talk about this because, oh my god, this is a lot. First things first, we talked about the help from US, and now President Zelenskyy has finished his visit to United States, and the visit was productive. There was a lot of agreements, there was a lot of talks that negotiated the general perspective. Zelenskyy's internal team has presented the Ukraine's victory plan. I really don't believe the articles that are right now reporting that this plan is supposedly lackluster, that it's basically restating a lot of the same things for United States and European unions to give weapons to Ukraine. I think that's kind of the given. Like, I don't think that any single one of you watching this video was expecting that in the plan there is not going to be give us weapons so then we can fight better. I think what's important in the plan is the details and how they're outlined and what kind of work will be happening in the subcommittees of this plan, discussing the general strategy and approach and weighing out whether or not the plan is realistic. A much interesting topic is what happened with the presidential drawdown authority while Zelenskyy was in the United States. In rough terms, US helps Ukraine in two different ways. One is the USA type of investments where United States are investing in the United States companies to produce weapons long-term for Ukraine. So it will be newly ordered equipment that will be manufactured in the United States and then delivered to Ukraine, and this is going to be happening over the years. The second part of the help is the Presidential Drawdown Authority, which is when President Biden authorizes equipment for the certain amount to be withdrawn from the stockpiles of United States and sent to Ukraine, and the money allocated for this effort will be then spent internally to resupply the stocks of United States arsenal. This is where we're talking about the second point, because during this visit, Biden has actually pledged, I believe, 8.2 billions in total, because this talks about 7.9 billion, but this was at the end. There was also a package announced for over 300 millions couple days before that. But this package consists of two parts. It consists of about 5.5 billion in the Presidential Drawdown Authority and 2.4 billion in the USA. That is going to be long-term supplies. So this 5.5 is relevant because it was due to expire by the end of September, I believe. There was a possibility for the Congress to provide extension for this. So Joe Biden was hoping that he will slowly continue drip feeding Ukraine with the supplies it needs. And it's an interesting strategy. I don't agree with this. I think that it would be very relevant for Ukraine to receive a lot more right away, but this is the strategy they're going with. And the point was that because United States were looking to use this money anyway, but the Congress didn't agree to advance and extend the limit of this money to be the term limit for this authority to be used, then Joe Biden basically announced, I am going to allocate all 5.5 billion in this drawdown authority right now, but it's going to get withdrawn from the stockpiles and delivered to Ukraine piece by piece until the end of Joe's term, which is January. And this is pretty good. 5.5 billion is significant amount. And this is great because this sets up Ukraine for the future, for the next year. One of the important things that we talked about recently is whether Ukraine will be able to equip additional brigades that they're getting on board. There were people spreading the news that Ukraine just doesn't have the manpower. That is not the case anymore as much as it was before. There is significant number of Ukrainian troops that are coming to Ukrainian military. There are two bottlenecks for Ukraine. One is the training capacity, because Ukraine needs more trainers to train all of these troops. And unfortunately, the initiative that the French president wanted to do to get the trainers into Ukraine, that was shut down. And secondly, and the training that is been ongoing on the European facilities, it's pretty much reached its capacity, and it needs additional expansions. There are new facilities coming online, for example, in Romania and other countries, but they're not there yet. So there is a big bottleneck on how many troops can Ukraine actually train to get to the field. And second bottleneck is the equipment, because Ukraine needs to build essentially two armies at once. And the problem of drip feeding ammunition, the way kind of that has been going on right now, is that does not allow to accumulate any kind of reasonable stock of equipped units. So Ukraine is forced, because it is right now defending against Russia, to send a significant part of the weapons and equipment that comes in straight to the front lines to supplement their defensive efforts, whereas a small part is being then prepared to re-equip the secondary army that could be then used for Ukrainian offensives. With this significant input, I do believe that Ukrainians will have enough resources to supplement their second army that can be used for offensive operations. So if all things come together, I'm not going to raise any expectations, but potentially we can see something happening around the spring, summer of next year. Additional blow for Putin, which is absolutely incredible, is the news that Saudi Arabia, after long time, a member of OPEC Plus is a cartel. It's a cartel of the oil-producing countries where they negotiate together, because every single country can produce incredible amounts of oil. They decide to sit together and discuss and say, let's produce less oil, each one of us, and that will cause the market to raise the prices for oil, which in turn is going to lead us to sell kind of less oil, so we're going to have a bigger stockpile, but still receive either the same amount, or we even going to see bigger profits because the price of oil will be so high. And it's obviously is very beneficial for Russia, because for Russia, when the price of oil is below $70, it is when their budget starts suffering, and their budget has a lot of issues. And I'm hoping I am going to release that video about talking about the economics of Russia and everything. But long story short, Saudi Arabia has been in this game of not increasing production for a while now, and they were hoping that this will push the oil prices past the $100 price point for the barrel of oil. The problem is it never really did. And US has been increasing production. Every other country that is not part of this cartel but is still an oil producing country has been increasing their production. China has been decreasing their dependency on oil, going to a shift to electric cars. In generally, there is a recession in oil consumption. And now Saudi Arabia basically stating is like, okay, enough is enough. We cannot hold this anymore. We are going to start putting oil from our production facilities on the market. This will mean only one thing. There's going to be additional pressure for the prices of oil to come down in the coming months and probably years. So if Russia was expecting that there are going to be high oil prices to keep fueling this war, think again. Moreover, Russia has a lot of other issues, and there is a new video by Covert Cabal, which I encourage you all to see. I will leave a link in the description, where he goes around the tank numbers and the storage bases and BMP numbers, and he explains in details that Russia is indeed by 2025 hitting the wall of their capabilities with regards to restoring all elderly equipment. So now they are going to be going into 2025 and hoping that the war basically is going to end in 2025. Otherwise, they are not going to have enough equipment. There has been a destruction of these ammunition depots recently that I talked about. Big explosions, huge things, but we find out more details. Russian Z propagandists are reporting that it's already felt on the front line, that right now there's going to be issues with some of the ammunition from these warehouses that were stored there. They were supposedly mostly dedicated to Kursk, Belgorod, and Kharkiv region operations. And it's kind of incredible that this is making such a strong impact. They're obviously stating that there could be a redistribution of things, but it's mostly because this is reported from the forces on the front line, whereas now we know that actually big part of what exploded in a lot of these warehouses was the anti-air missiles. So here, for example, additional news that were reported is that 94 rail cars with anti-air missiles for the S-300 systems have been delivered to these bases shortly before the strikes of Ukrainians on these facilities. So that's pretty good. That means it's basically not only the anti-air missiles are going to be a problem for Russia, but also some of the equipment, which is great. More of this, please. A couple of news about the front line. Here, I'm not going to go in depth. I'm going to do a separate video for the update on the front line. But in general, situation in Vuhledar is pretty bad. What I'm expecting is for Ukrainians to already slowly start pulling out from Vuhledar, and I'm expecting Vuhledar to be captured by Russians relatively shortly. It is not nice, but it was expected. And this is a good point for me to talk about this. So some people state, they look at my videos and say, Georgie, you're always stating that Ukraine is winning, but when it's going to lose? Well, I think there is a bit of a language issue for me. Maybe I didn't express myself clearly. So when in every video I state that Ukraine is in a defensive operation, that for 2024, Ukraine is fully focused on the defensive operation, what I mean is that Ukraine doesn't maybe have enough resource, it maybe doesn't have enough manpower, is that the Russia has the advantage, so they can go on offensive. So I mean that it is expected that Ukraine as a defender, a complete defender, will be losing some territory because the other side just have more resources, more advantage, more. And I'm stating that despite Ukraine in 2024 being on a full-blown defensive posture, despite losing a territory here and there, they are still doing incredible maneuvers with their limited forces and are able, and this is important, to take more of the Russian territory than Russia did of Ukrainians, at least so far. Russians are still in, if you want to do this counting of kilometers, which I don't really care about, like I don't think it's relevant, but if you really want to do, then Russia is still catching up to what Ukraine has gained in the Kursk area. But the point still stands. It's like defensive operation is not being done because of how good Ukraine it has. It is not done because they want to be nice to Russians. If Ukraine would have resources, if Ukraine would have the advantages and possibilities to be on the offensive against Russia, they would be doing this. So when I'm stating that it's on defensive, that just means that Ukraine is trying to prevent Russia from capturing more of their land, and they're defending it. And I hope it's clear now, and we can move on. And defenses of the lands are pretty cool. There is a very cool video that I really saw, and I just want to share it. It's with Abrams that is fully stocked with the explosive, the kinetic, what is these called? The boxes with the reactive explosive armor. And it's been operating on the front lines in Pokrovsk area. So Abrams tanks, even if there was just 31 of them, which is, again, I'm going to ask, why still just 31? They're doing the job, they're working hard, and they're helping Ukrainians preserve more of their territory. Please send more. China has been accused with some apparently evidence that they were doing some of the supplies of Russia of potential drone equipment, but it's also important to note that after this was done, and that's exactly when the United States started introducing a lot of the secondary sanctions against the Chinese companies. So I believe it's a relevant story to keep in mind, but I feel that this story of China potentially supplying Russia with military equipment, it has been already treated, and China has walked back from dealing with a lot of Russian military supplying a lot of the Russian military. But it's still worth noting, and we should monitor this very, very closely. Additionally, I want to say sorry to all of the people from Czechia. I used this headline here about Petr Pavel talking about the support for Ukraine, maybe considering giving some concessions and be realistic on the front lines. You have pointed out that this was not exactly what he said. It was taken out of context and twisted around. I did re-review the source, and I agree with you completely. I used mostly what he said to illustrate the point that I made about that why Ukraine shouldn't agree to any kind of peace negotiations. But still, I want to be very clear that this is not what Petr Pavel said. Petr Pavel did not fully advertise for Ukraine to surrender. What he did say is that there is a lot of wariness in the Western Alliance people, and obviously they want to see some kind of a results, and they want to see the possibility of how Ukraine can win this war. So, I mean, basically stating nothing new, that there's still a lot of pussies at the helm of the European Union to actually believe in the victory of Ukraine and believe that Russia indeed can lose. Thankfully, it's not what's happening on this channel. Switzerland is the party that was hosting the Ukraine-led peace summit, now is like shifting gears and saying, is like, oh, why don't we support this Chinese-Brazilian peace plan instead? Let's be very, very clear. There is no China-Brazilian peace plan. It's not a peace plan. I've read it. It's a lot of really good ideas. It's like, why don't the parties just, like, stop firing? That's the level of the peace plan they're describing here. And this peace initiative is absolute dog shit. And I'm pretty sure it is driven by Russia in a large sense. There is no peace plan. I don't know what Switzerland is doing and why they're thinking with their ass, but it's a stupid, stupid idea. And thankfully, they're already paying for this position with some reputation, and not only by damaging their own military industry. So after Switzerland has been blocking of resale on resending the weapons that had components that were produced in Switzerland so they can be sent to Ukraine, citing, and this is like real, citing that we are not supporting our weapons to be used in a war. I mean, it's weapons. Even sending them to the defending sides, it's weapons, and it's obviously money. Like we don't need to be very, very clever here to understand why they're doing this. But the point is, they are finding out. They're in the situation where their military industry is now finding out, because European Union countries that used to work with Switzerland are breaking the contracts and not making new ones. There you go, Switzerland. Please reconsider your position. Please reconsider on which side of this are you, because this is not a good company. There is an interesting article, if you want to read into Ukrainian efforts to convince Donald Trump to win him over from the Russian side. It's an interesting read if you're interested about this. I am not very interested about this, because Zelenskyy met with Trump. Trump supposedly did like a whole 180, where a day before he was talking how Ukraine is already gone and this war is over. Now he's praising Zelenskyy and so on. Words are cheap. I don't believe a word Trump says. What I look at always is the action, and so far the action record for Trump is dog shit. He's not a friend of Ukraine. We shouldn't trust him. He will say anything to get the votes for the election season. Actions of Trump have been devastating to Ukraine so far, and we should absolutely not let any kind of change of rhetoric suddenly give us some kind of leeway that he potentially could be good for Ukraine. It's all gaslighting and pre-election rhetoric. Words are cheap. His actions has spoken. He hates Ukraine. He will sell it out. Putin has revised nuclear doctrine, which, like, this BBC article, oh, sorry, CNN article here writes, like, Putin revised his nuclear doctrine, but have his red lines shifted? You know, the second part of this needs to be erased, and instead it should say, Putin revised his nuclear doctrine. No one cares, because that's exactly where we are. It's just saber rattling. This does nothing. Like, Russia is a dictatorship. They do not need a doctrine. They don't have due process. If Putin wants to nuke something, he can nuke it at any time. If he doesn't want to nuke it, he will not nuke it. There is no due process. There are no other responsible people that can do it, and so on. If there will be an order, it's only because this guy suddenly decides to end his life. That's when he will decide to use nuclear weapons. But still, there is enough of idiots online and everywhere around the world to, like, oh my god, he's revising nuclear doctrine and now it's going to be more absolute dog shit. And China and Brazil kind of like looking right straight through this, and they're like, it's actually like, it's not just China and Brazil, it's like, it's also like Bolivia, Turkey, South Africa, Colombia, Egypt, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Kenya, Zambia, Algeria, and so on. They're like, yeah, don't use nuclear weapons. Bad idea, Russia. Bad idea. That's basically, they're responding to Putin's effort. It's stupid. It's just a saber rattling. Surprisingly, why I need to explain, because it's absolutely clear for these countries. It should be clear for us as well. In any case, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I see you next time.